if there's anything you would want to remove.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
How's your Saturday so far?
Oh, who are you talking to?
You.
Oh, okay. I slept a lot. Yeah.
That's a good Saturday.
I've been just so exhausted. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm moderating from my bed.
That's okay. I'm in my bed right now.
Mm-hmm.
I had some bridesmaids duties this morning, but I sprained my foot. So I was
no.
just like hobbling to Alexandria. Body tells you not to go fast, and then I do it anyway. Here comes Bryanna.
Hello, Bryanna. Oh, I am on.
Oh,
Oh.
we'll let her back in.
Maybe some tech problems.
Yeah, we will. We have time to have problems.
Yeah. I love to log in early for that reason. Hi, Bryanna. Can you hear us?
Oh, we can't hear you yet.
Hello.
Oh, yay.
Hi.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome. I can hear you loud and clear now.
What? Testing. You're welcome.
Thank heavens for Justin.
Yeah. Could y'all hear him shouting at me from the other room?
Yes. Good communication. Can he hear us okay?
I don't know. Can you hear us okay? He didn't answer. It's fine.
Well, I can hear y'all, so I'll take that as a good sign.
Yeah.
Hello, Quinton.
Oh, hello.
think we're just waiting on Jackie.
Mm-hmm.
But welcome everyone who's joined already. Excited to see everyone.
May, are you going to introduce the panel or am I going to?
Nope, it's all yours, Hughes.
Oh, yay.
But I'm here however you need me to support you.
Okay.
Just gonna give Jackie another minute or so. And then we can probably just get started.
Sorry, I had my mic off. To confirm with everyone, we are recording this so that we can clip it for like Instagram Reels later and post it on our YouTube, if that's okay. And I believe Justin also has us set up to stream to YouTube, but we didn't publicize that we were streaming it to YouTube. We're kind of just making sure it works, if that's okay with everyone.
All good.
Thanks, Allison. Bryanna and Quinton, where are y'all from? Whoever wants to answer.
Melbourne.
Melbourne?
Yeah, Melbourne, Australia for me. If you could tell by my accent, which might be apparent to people who are not from Australia.
Yes, as a non-Australian person, I can confirm that. What about you, Bryanna?
I've moved around the U.S. a lot, currently in Chicago, Illinois.
Oh, I love Chicago.
Mhm.
I know I am from the DC area, so I was blissfully unaware that there is a beach in the middle of the country. Blew my mind when I went there for summertime.
Mm-hmm.
And Hughes, are you from North Carolina?
No. I am from Ohio.
Okay.
Yay.
Midwest. Awesome. All right, excited. Welcome, Jackie. Happy to have you here. Allison, if you wouldn't mind just pinning Jackie with the rest of the panelists, and then we can go ahead and get started.
All right. Oh, is Jackie pinned yet?
No, not yet. I think we're in the process.
Okay. I'll wait until Jackie is pinned.
Thanks, Hughes.
All right. Welcome to the Autistic Authors Writing Autistic Characters panel. I'll just start off by introducing all of the authors and just maybe wave when you are introduced so people know who you are. Okay, first to be introduced is Bryanna Bond. Bryanna Bond is the author of many stories, including the comedic drama series The Queen of Thieves, the autistic cheerleader romance Imani and Aaliyah's Fashion Bible, and so much more. She's also a frequent YouTube creator, talking about anything from books she's reading to the politics of our burning world, or even art and Pokemon. Always up to 1,001 things, she's bound to have something fun and probably dorky to share. All right. Then there is Quinton Li. Quinton is a Melbourne-based non-binary novelist and anthology curator. They're the author of Tell Me How It Ends and Chrysalis and Requiem, and editor of Devout, an anthology of angels and reverent, an anthology of divinity. Their work often engages with identity, justice, faith, and the unknown. Sorry about that. All right. And Jackie Khalilieh is a Palestinian Canadian writer with a penchant for Samoyeds, I probably said that wrong, to-do lists and staying up way too late. She is passionate about positive representation with her writing. Something more. Her debut YA novel was shortlisted for the Ruth and Sylvia Schwartz Award, as well as the Snow Willow Award, and was selected for several Best of 2023 lists, including the New York Public Library and Audible Books Canada. Among others. She resides just outside Toronto, Canada, with her husband and 2 daughters, continuing to complain nightly about having to cook dinner. All right, so thank you for joining us, everyone. And I'll just start asking the first question. And if you could be the first one to answer, Bryanna, how are your autistic characters challenged or supported by their environments?
I think for my characters, a major way that they are challenged by their environments is how impatient life, and especially like Western life, is. I've seen it in a lot of different ways, from like jobs that don't actually want to train you unless you can pick something up immediately, or school where you get penalized if you can't pick up the information in the specific way they're teaching it this week. In Imani and Aaliyah, it is life just going by way too fast to be patient for someone who needs time to execute alternative communication options, or someone who needs a lot of time to feel safe and start to open up to people socially. And when Imani starts to actually find people that not only give her that time and that space, but give it to her shamelessly, that is when she actually has space to start feeling support and growing from there.
That's great. All right, Quinton.
Yeah, so all of my novels feature a primary character who is autistic, and they are challenged because a lot of my books are about change. And of course, that tends to be what the catalyst is about anyway. But I like to think that as an important part, if that's environment, if that's the stakes at hand. My debut novel with Iris as my autistic main character, she literally is going into a world that she's never been to, like in before. She's used to her environment, used to her routines, and so her routines have shifted. Her expectations have changed. Though very similarly, the characters who surround her and the world around her, at least, is very accepting of that, and it's not an issue for them. And so she has the social support around her, and at the very least, it's environmental rather than other people making it more difficult for her. And it's all about her navigating that in that story.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. And Jackie?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, yes, I can. How are your autistic characters challenged or supported by their environments? And you can, it's like an and or question. So you can say, or like support it, like if you only have like one or the other.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think my answer is very similar to Quinton's in the sense that any change in routine or relationship dynamics can set my characters, especially off course. Um, I write my characters very similarly to how I experience my own autism. And for me to exist as an autistic person in a neurotypical world, I cling to my routines and my safe people. And when those things are ripped away from me, I sort of spiral. And hence my characters basically spiraling for 300 pages in my stories.
Thank you for answering that. Yeah. That is very relatable. Yeah. Okay, next question, unless someone has something to add. Okay. I think, Jackie, you touched on this in your answer, but how much does your own experience of autism impact the development of your autistic characters? And do you want to answer first, Quinton?
Yes, so I have a great story about this. Very short story, but a great story. I got diagnosed because I wrote Iris and Tell Me How It Ends. Not because of that, but like when people started saying, "Oh, I think she's autistic," or I really related because I had never seen a character like me who has autism in that way, like in reviews and when people were reading it. I wasn't diagnosed when I wrote this book, but I wrote Iris just like Jackie, like me. I wrote uh, what would feel in certain situations into Iris, and she is a separate character, but a lot of what she does mirrors what I did at that time of my life a few years ago, and so it's very intrinsic. Um, yeah, it's very intrinsic because of the fact that because of my experiences, she was portrayed in that way, and then because she was portrayed in that way, it led me to actually getting my formal diagnosis for autism. So yeah, it's quite quite significant.
Wow, that's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny how so much of ourselves is put into our writing, and like how that can affect our lives.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, Jackie. would you like to answer next?
Yes. Sorry, I'm just reading the question again in the chat. So when I wrote my first book, Something More, it was before I was officially diagnosed. And so I was writing my main character very similarly to how I experienced life. And then once I received that diagnosis, it became a bigger part of the story. It became a main part of the story. And it allowed me to see myself through the lens of 14-year-old me again and get to experience life again, this time with that diagnosis in hand, which I found to be a very healing experience for me. With my second book, I didn't set out to make my main character autistic. Um, it was, for me, the focus was her generalized anxiety disorder, which is something that I struggle with, probably due to the autism. And as early readers were reading the story, a lot of them were saying that although Jamie, my main character, was not labeled autistic, she was autistic coded. And it forced me to look back on the story with fresh eyes. And it was painfully clear that, yes, she was autistic. And I had sort of this experience of being an autistic author. Does that mean that every character I write will have to be autistic? Because I kind of tried to steer away from that with my second book. And I failed. And she's very autistic. I don't know why I didn't realize it while I was writing. It's all there. I think, though, because it's not labeled in the book, readers who read that story might be less forgiving to that character because they don't know she's undiagnosed autistic. And that's been interesting for me to see how I'm finding that readers are a lot tougher with my second main character because she doesn't have that diagnosis in hand. And so as an autistic person, it makes me think back to growing up undiagnosed for the first 39 years of my life, and how people were not nice to me because they didn't know there was a reason that I was the way that I was. And so whether or not I mean to or not, my characters will always reflect a part of me, whether they're officially diagnosed or not, and how I've experienced my life so far.
Yes. Thank you for answering that so graciously. All right, Bryanna.
Similar to the other two, I think my writing is probably a clear diagnosis than anything I've ever actually tried to say to a doctor. And a lot of it is because when I'm writing, I'm trying to come from a position of wanting to translate the experiences that I'm having into text in a way that'll like make it clear without the full life experience present. And that's especially with regards to like mental health stuff. And the writing then just becomes a space to figure out, to process and express all of these things. For Amani and Aaliyah, I was in the middle of writing the book when I realized I was autistic, and then the whole story pivoted to just allow it to be a space for me to start to understand verbal struggles. I'd never really done more thinking about than just being frustrated with them when I was younger. I never tried to understand them and tried to give myself grace for them. And the book was then a space to understand them, let them be a real thing, and actually take a second to picture what I might need and what accessibility options I might want to like pursue and would actually help relieve some of that stress. It's definitely, yeah, writing has 100% of me, just a part of me trying to be worked through, figured out, and understood, and that fully impacts how the characters then start interacting with the world and with everything around them.
That's amazing. Okay, so last question is, how important are holistic characters to the development of your artistic characters? Would you like to start, Jackie?
I haven't. It's an interesting question because I think with my first book, the whole point was Jesse being newly diagnosed as autistic and surrounded by holistic people and trying to figure out how to navigate all the different relationships and social structures around her. And it's funny because when I thought about it, because I'm been writing a novella for something more and revisiting with those characters. And one of the characters in the book, I can say with confidence, Levi, if anyone's read the book, would be somebody who has ADHD. And I think it's interesting because after Jesse, Levi was probably the character who was the most critiqued and or criticized in the story. And I think that's just it's it's upsetting, and I understand that. Okay, so he's a flawed character. Everybody's a flawed character. But it's upsetting to notice these themes that the characters that are neurotypical or neurodivergent are often the ones to readers who receive the most critique, criticism, and even hate. And um, I think it's interesting how their dynamic was different than her dynamic with holistic people, because whereas people didn't quite understand why Jesse felt this connection to him and kept clinging back to him, um, there was something that he saw in her and she saw in him. And maybe it was the fact, without realizing it, that they were both two people living in a world that wasn't basically built for them. Um, I think it's an interesting thing to show how an autistic person. I say this in my third book um, that comes out next summer. It's another young adult. It's more of a coming of age story, and my main character says that autistic people are expected to accommodate and fit into a world that wasn't built for them. But it's so often that it's us that needs those accommodations, and we are never met with them. And so when people say that autistic people are rigid or get angry easily or not flexible, it's we spend our whole lives trying to fit into a world that wasn't created for us. And the second that we ask of some accommodations, people can't do that for us, whereas that's what we've been doing our whole lives for other people.
Yeah, that's a really, I don't even know the word to say. But yeah, it's it's snaps, yeah, good. Yeah. All right. So Bryanna,
Before I answer the question, I do want to say really quickly, I have read something more, and I do think you did a very good job of making Levi feel like a young boy, lots of strong emotions, just could not really get a hold of and pinpoint what exactly he wanted and what exactly he needed. And that was starting to like have ramifications around him. I think you did a really good job of writing that. For the question, a lot of my characters, in addition to being autistic, are also struggling with a lot of mental health stuff, and through that developing bad habits and trauma responses. And holistic characters are important because these habits and responses don't come from nowhere. And Amani avoids talking to people, and she tries not to get attached to the idea of forming new relationships with people because people do actually just gravitate away from her when she's struggling to be verbal, when she's struggling to talk, even if she does want to be around them. And like Jackie was saying, like Allistics and being in a world where how autistic people and non-autistic, non-neurodivergent people behave is treated like the only appropriate way to exist in the world, that creates a lot of barriers for autistic people. And when we're writing these characters, they adapt in the same ways to those barriers, and that creates very real patterns of behavior. And it does impact how they are able to then engage in those spaces where they're not really welcome, not really allowed to exist the way they need to.
Thank you. Okay, so Quinton?
Yeah, so I liked what Jackie said about the ADHD autism pairing. 2 out of 3 of my novels have that in the main characters. Iris has autism, and Marin, who's a secondary character, has ADHD. In my novella, my most recent publication, Perrin is the one with ADHD, and Inari is the one with autism. And I don't know, that's like an accident, sort of. I don't know how intentionally I did it, but I definitely think I mirror that sentiment in terms of my character with autism does have a attachment, a healthy, friendly attachment to their ADHD pairing, whether that's romantic in my recent novella or platonic in my debut novel. And I think it's really key that those pairings of characters are able to jump off each other. And for, at least for Iris in Tell Me How It Ends, to be supported by someone else who also navigates the world in a different way than neurotypical people do. At least from what I know of my own characters, some other characters who are part of the main cast, let's say, may not identify as neurodivergent or have a neurodivergency. Yet, I believe having that that safe person, as mentioned, and a sort of, I wouldn't say safe box, but like safe environment to be able to explore things without it being strange to their close person is really important. And I can appreciate that sort of dynamic in stories as well that help us see solidarity as people who do very much exist in this real life. And while our issues may not always come from this part of us, it is definitely an intersectional and contextual identity when it comes to many things. So, yeah, I'd say a lot of the characters that surround my autistic characters, whether they are a different neurodivergence or neurotypical, are important to the development of my characters, even as simple as safety.
That's so important.
Can I add something?
Oh, yeah.
I think that readers who are allistic really underestimate when they're reading a book by an autistic author how deeply autistic people can form an attachment, like building onto Quinton's point. Um, it's 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 hard enough for us to find people, and then when we do find people, in my experience, I latch on. And so a common criticism that I've had for both my books, and it's really hard on a side note, publishing books in a traditional publishing space for traditional readers who are expecting to read a book um, that follows a typical plot structure because that's the way it's supposed to be. But going back to my other point, I get a lot of criticism from my characters who cannot move on, who go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And I write it like that on purpose because that's been my experience. Even when I'm trying to detach myself from somebody who's no longer um, good for me or whatever it is, it's never just cut and dry. It's a process. There is a lot of back and forth. And I show that on the page, I show it in the book. And it frustrates a lot of readers, probably because it's not following the plot beats and the pacing is kind of all over the place. But that's an authentic experience. If you're coming from somebody, if the author is somebody who is neurodiverse, right? Like, you can't expect us to follow relationship stories, especially, to follow certain beats. Romances look differently, friendships look differently, everything looks differently. And I think that, especially because we form these attachments that are so deep, um, readers can get frustrated very easily by watching the main character continue to make mistakes or go back and forth when they should have just cut ties cleanly. That would be great. It's just, it's never been my experience to be able to say, okay, bye, I'm done with you, right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that it's a great way of honoring yourself to like to just write in the way that you know how, and in the way that is true to your soul. And I think that it probably, as much as it doesn't resonate with some people, it probably resonates with a whole lot of people. And when I was reading your book, I was like on that roller coaster of like, oh no, please don't do this. But also I was like, I would probably do something like that. And I feel like her character is sort of like that. She can kind of observe other people and be very logical, like with other people's relationships, but in her own, it's harder. So thank you so much. And now we're going to I forget if it's 45 minutes, so May.
We can just open up for audience
Yeah.
questions. There's one from Allison, if you wouldn't mind reading that, Hughes.
Yes, I can do that. One moment. All right. I just need to get to the questions part of it, which I'm having trouble with.
If you'd like, I can interject.
That would be great. I'm so sorry.
No, don't be happy to help. So this is from Allison Araya Busk. She said, all of your books have gorgeous covers. Did y'all get help with those? I'm just gonna go by order of my screen. Bryanna, would you mind answering first?
I made my cover myself. I illustrated the illustrations and then did the graphic design to organize the whole thing together for the entire cover.
That's incredible.
Can you show it to us? Do you have it with you? No?
Oh, I don't know how to share my screen.
Oh, you don't have a copy with you?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll answer. I have had a lot of creative control in my covers, which I was told is not always typical for the traditional publishing space, but with my well, it depends. Like my first book, I gave my editor an 18-page slideshow, so it was a little bit extra with that. I just had a very clear image of what the characters look like, and I think I have it with me. I wanted to have all three characters on the main cover, and sorry, I don't know why it's blurry. I guess because I have a filter on. Okay. And I'm really happy with this cover because it shows the three main characters. With my second, I was less involved with my second cover because my personal life, I was going through a lot. And I was sort of like, I don't care, do whatever. But then my editor was like, no, we need a little bit more. And so I just pulled some scenes from the story and some character descriptions. And I asked for a particular artist, and we were able to get that artist. And they came up with this cover, which I think perfectly captures the vibes of this story. So I've been very lucky with that. And my third book, um, each book has had a different artist, and I think it. We debated between book and two if we had the same artist or not, but we just felt like every book for me has been a completely different sort of thing, even though there's like evergreen themes in the stories. My third book is more of a coming of age than it is a romance, and um, I wanted something that was beautiful and moody and angsty, and I can give you guys a really quick preview of the cover since it's just a very intimate crowd. So this is the cover for the third book,
Ooh.
and
That's so nice.
I'll get to share it next month or so. And I love it. I think it completely captures. I'm a very visual person, so covers are important to me, and I want to make sure that the cover sort of captures the vibes of the story. And I think mine so far have been able to do that.
Yeah, that is really cool that you get to have that input as a traditional author. It's a very special thing. For me, I am an independent author, so I get all of the input on my covers. I don't, not quite like Bryanna, I don't make my own covers, but I'm just going to send my website in there. All my book covers are on the homepage. I work with queer and trans and or trans artists for my covers, and I think it just happens to be that way because of the networks I'm in as a queer and trans person. And so, yeah, I have a lot of say in the design process. I too send reference documents with many pages. I'm also a very visual person too, and I like to have my characters depicted in a very true way on the covers. So I actually did have an old cover for All You Want for the Holidays because it was originally published as part of like an anthology series where every author contributed to like the same theme, but a series of books. But yeah, after that holiday season passed, I had commissioned character art of these two for All You Want for the Holidays, and I loved that commission art so much. I wanted it to be the new cover because I thought it was so true to what I wanted. So yeah, that's actually one of the great things I find in being able to execute a certain creative vision for independently published books is that there's always something unique to bring for these artists who may not necessarily get to do a lot of book cover work if they're not already in the industry. So yeah, thank you for that question because book covers are, some people do judge books by the cover in good ways.
And I think we've got time for one more question that's in the chat. Hughes, do you prefer that I read, or would you like to read it?
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry. I found the messages, so I think I can look through and if any. Okay, yes, Justin has a question. I think it's really interesting what Jackie was saying about writing an autistic main character versus an undiagnosed autistic character. How they were received differently by readers. It's a lot like real life because people we meet don't always know everything we have going on, and sometimes we don't even know everything we have going on. Do you feel like autistic characters should be diagnosed for the reader's benefit? Do you think there's value in having autistic characters who aren't diagnosed for the reader?
I'm happy to go first for that one.
Okay.
So my characters technically would be called like coded because I don't remember using the exact wording of being autistic or ADHD actually in my books. But I think a big caveat to that as well is that as an independent author, a lot of the time readers come to my books through marketing that I do. And so rather than including it in the synopsis or the book itself, I always very upfrontly market my characters or books as having those identities as part of them. And so that's a bit of context for where I'm coming from in my position. And do I feel like autistic characters should be diagnosed for the reader's benefits? I don't think they have to be. I don't think it's not it's not in the terms of entitlement, but it's sort of like sometimes people do just exist and it doesn't come up as much. I think it can be cool if authors do integrate that into the story and the language that is used in the story. Though I think as well, there have been plenty of readers who are able to relate to characters who are intentionally or not intentionally written in a certain manner that reflects their experiences as perhaps an autistic person. And that definitely makes me think that there's value in autistic characters who aren't diagnosed on page, whether that is through an experience, but also like just saying like the word on page for the reader, because I think experiences sometimes speak louder than the label. Again, it's like a thing that I think is really valuable to label as well on page, but at the same time, it can be a very internal thing to experience as a reader in relating to a character who doesn't necessarily have that clear diagnosis.
Okay. Bryanna. Oh, Jackie.
Oh, sorry. I
Were
was
you
going to say,
going to?
yeah, I mean, I guess because I brought up the topic, um, I think to get a diagnosis also comes with privilege, and not everybody has access to getting a diagnosis. I was able to fast track mine because I had private insurance and was able to go that way. Otherwise, the waiting list would have been multiple years. Same with my daughter. We were able to use private insurance to fast track getting her diagnosis, which led to my diagnosis. Um, so there's definitely privilege in having the label. I do have mixed feelings about not having Jamie labeled, only because I feel so protective of my characters. And when people use very ableist language to speak critically about my characters, there's a part of me that wants to say, but she's autistic, you know? She's impulsive, she's emotional. She doesn't always know how to process her feelings on the spot. And so part of me is like, yeah, I wish I had that label for Jamie so that people could maybe be a little bit more kind to her. Like they were mostly kind to Jesse, but that still didn't stop Jesse, even with the label, from receiving ableist comments, right? A lot of people called her stupid and dumb and slow and said a lot of hurtful things that I found hurtful. And I'm sure other autistic people felt hurtful as well, right? Things that we've all been told our whole lives. So I think, for my third character, my third book, it was important for me now to go from book one having a character who was newly diagnosed, book two having a character who doesn't realize yet that they're autistic, to my third character being someone who was diagnosed young in life. And by the time we meet this character, she is confident about who she is, and she understands more about why she behaves in certain ways because of her autism. And I like to call her like unabashedly autistic. And that was a really fun experience for me to write, because by the time I wrote that book, I was comfortable in my labels and who I was, and wanting to write a character who didn't mask as much or hide the things that I had spent so many years hiding myself. But I don't think there's a yes or no answer to this question. I think there's validity in having characters who are artistic coded. I think it's fine to have characters who maybe are not yet diagnosed, maybe characters who have also self-diagnosed, because like I said, there is privilege that comes with being able to even receive a diagnosis.
Thank you so much. And Bryanna.
I think a lot like what Jackie was saying, there's a lot I've had a lot of experiences where having these things on paper in the book don't change how people are going to react to it. I've also had a lot of, especially coming from writing a lot of mental health, depression, and stuff like that, that doesn't fall into the like toxic positivity range that people are typically used to. If it doesn't match what their expectations of these labels and of these diagnoses looks like, then they're going to be just as harsh with it. And so I think it more matters for what makes sense for the story, what makes sense for the character and the environment on, and you while you're writing, if it's important to label it, because you can't control how harsh people are going to be and whether or not people are going to judge that character and whether or not that label is going to change anything for them.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much, Justin. Thanks everyone for their answers. Jackie. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So Jackie, Quinton, Bryanna, thank you so much for being our panelists. You gave great answers and were just a wonderful group of people to talk with. I hope that you'll have a great evening or day wherever you are.
Me too.
Thank you for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Bye.
It is almost 9 a.m. for me, so I'll be having a good day.
Okay.
Good morning to you then. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Thank you, Hughes, for moderating. I'll see you all soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.